Who you have to become. When most people set out to achieve new goals, they ask, okay, I have my goal. Now what do I need to do to get it? While this isn't a bad question, it's not the first question that needs to be addressed. Instead, we should be asking ourselves, who do I need to become? You probably know some people who seem to do all the right things but still don't produce the results they want. Why not? One thing Jim Rohn taught me is, if you want to have more, you have to become more. Success is not something you pursue. What you pursue will elude you. It can be like trying to chase butterflies. Success is something you attract by the person you become. When I fully grasped this philosophy, it revolutionized my life and personal growth. When I was single and ready to find my life partner, I made a long list of traits I desired in the perfect woman for me. I filled more than 40 pages in a journal, describing her in great detail, her personality, character, key attributes, attitudes, and philosophies about life. I even envisioned her family background, culture, and physical appearance, down to the texture of her hair. I wrote in depth about the life we would build together and the experiences we would share. Had I then asked myself, what do I have to do to find and get this girl? I might still be on that endless search. Instead, I looked back at the list and asked a more important question. Do I embody the same qualities I expect in her? I considered, what kind of man would a woman like this be looking for? Who do I need to become to attract and keep a woman of this caliber? I then wrote 40 more pages describing the attributes, qualities, behaviors, attitudes, and characteristics I needed to develop within myself. From that point on, I committed to becoming that person. The result? It worked. As if she had stepped right out of the pages of my journal, my wife, Georgia, is exactly what I described and hoped for, down to the smallest details. The key was getting clear on who I needed to become to attract and keep a woman of her quality, and then doing the work to make that transformation happen. Behave yourself. Now that you've set your goals, it's time to map out the process to achieve them. This is the doing phase, or, in some cases, the stop doing phase. The biggest obstacle between you and your goals is your behavior. Are there habits you need to eliminate to prevent the compound effect from working against you? Similarly, what habits should you adopt to ensure you're moving in the right direction? In other words, which behaviors are blocking your progress, and which ones will help you reach your goals? You might think you're fully aware of your bad habits, but chances are, you're not. That's why tracking is so powerful. Ask yourself, do I really know how much time I spend watching TV every day? How many hours do I spend consuming news or following the achievements of others, whether in sports, fashion, or entertainment? How much soda do I drink? How many hours do I waste on social media, scrolling through content that doesn't add value to my life? As I emphasized in the previous chapter, the first step is becoming fully aware of your behavior. Where have you unknowingly developed habits that are steering you off course? Not long ago, a successful executive I worked with wanted to optimize his productivity. He was doing well, but he knew he could perform at an even higher level. I asked him to track his daily activities for a week, and I quickly noticed a common pattern. He was spending an excessive amount of time consuming news. He read the newspaper for 45 minutes each morning, listened to news radio for 30 minutes during his commute, checked Yahoo News throughout the workday, watched local news while greeting his family, and ended his evening with another hour of sports highlights and the 10 o'clock news. In total, he was consuming 3.5 hours of news daily. The issue? He wasn't a journalist, an economist, or in a profession that required constant news updates. He was simply caught in a habit. I suggested he turn off the TV and radio, cancel his newspaper subscription, and set up an RSS feed to receive only the news relevant to his business and personal interests. This simple adjustment eliminated 95% of the unnecessary information cluttering his mind and stealing his time. He could now get all the essential news in under 20 minutes per day. That small change freed up nearly 3 extra hours daily, time he redirected toward exercising, listening to educational podcasts, reading, planning, and spending quality moments with his family. He later told me he felt significantly less stressed, since constant exposure to negative news breeds anxiety, more inspired, and far more focused. A single habit change led to a massive boost in his overall productivity and well-being. Now it's your turn. Grab a notebook and write down your top 3 goals. Then, make a list of all the habits that might be sabotaging your progress. Be honest with yourself. Write down every single one. Remember, habits and behaviors never lie. If your actions don't align with your words, I'll believe your actions every time. If you say you want to be healthy but have Doritos dust on your fingers, I believe the Doritos. If you claim self-improvement is a priority but spend more time gaming than reading, I believe the Xbox. If you call yourself a dedicated professional but constantly show up late and unprepared, your behavior exposes the truth. If you say your family is your top priority but never schedule time for them, then in reality, they aren't. Look at your list of bad habits. That's the truth about who you are right now. The question is, are you okay with that? If not, it's time to change. Next, create a list of habits you need to adopt, small, consistent actions that, when compounded over time, will lead to the successful achievement of your goals. This exercise isn't about self-judgment or regret. It's about taking an honest, clear-headed look at where you were and where you want to be. Now, let's eliminate those bad habits and replace them with positive, productive ones that will set you up for success. Game changers. 5 strategies for eliminating bad habits. Your habits are not permanent, they are learned, which means they can also be unlearned. If you want to steer your life in a new direction, you must first remove the anchors of bad habits that have been holding you back. The key is to strengthen your why power to the point where it overcomes your desire for immediate gratification. To make that happen, you need a solid strategy. Here are my top 5 game changers. 1. Identify your triggers. Take a close look at the bad habits you've listed. For each one, determine what triggers it. Pay attention to what I call the Big Fours, the who, what, where, and when behind each behavior. Ask yourself, are there certain people you're around when you tend to drink too much? Is there a specific time of day when your cravings for sweets kick in? Do particular emotions, like stress, fatigue, frustration, nervousness, or boredom, cause you to fall into bad habits? When do these emotions typically arise? Who are you with? Where are you, and what are you doing? What situations tend to bring out your bad habits? Does it happen when you're driving? Before a performance review? During family gatherings? At social events? When you're feeling insecure? Under tight deadlines? Examine your daily routines. What do you usually say to yourself when you wake up? How do you behave during coffee or lunch breaks? What habits do you fall into when you get home after a long day? Grab your notebook or use the Bad Habit Killer worksheet to write down your triggers. Just taking this step will greatly increase your self-awareness. However, Awareness alone isn't enough to break a bad habit. There's more work to be done. Two, clean house. Get to scrubbin'. And I mean this literally and figuratively. If you want to stop drinking alcohol, remove every drop of it from your house and your vacation house if you have one. Get rid of the glasses, any fancy utensils or doodads you use when you drink, and those decorative olives, too. If you want to stop drinking coffee, heave the coffee maker and give that bag of gourmet grounds to a sleepy neighbor. If you're trying to curb your spending, take an evening and cancel every catalog or retail offer that flies in through your mailbox or your inbox, so you won't even need to muster the discipline to walk it from the front door to the recycle bin. If you want to eat more healthfully, clean your cupboards of all the crap, stop buying the junk food, and stop buying into the argument that it's not fair to deny the other people in your family junk food just because you don't want it in your life. Trust me, everyone in your family is better off without it. Don't bring it into the house, period. Get rid of whatever enables your bad habits. 3. Swap it. Look again at your list of bad habits. How can you alter them so that they're not as harmful? Can you replace them with healthier habits or drop-kick them altogether? As in, for good. Anyone who knows me knows that I love something sweet after a meal. If there is ice cream in the house, the something sweet turns into a triple scoop banana split with all the fixings, 1,255 calories. Instead, I replace that bad habit with 2 Hershey's Kisses, 50 calories. I'm still able to satisfy the sweet tooth without having to spend the extra hour on the treadmill just to get back to even. My sister-in-law started a habit of eating crunchy and salty junk food when she watched TV. She'd crunch through a whole bag of tortilla chips with little actual awareness. Then she realized that what she really enjoyed was the crunchy sensation in her mouth. She decided to replace her bad habit with crunching on carrot and celery sticks and raw broccoli spears. She got the same joyful sensation, and her FDA-recommended vegetable servings at the same time. A guy who used to work for me had a habit of drinking 8 to 10 Diet Cokes a day. That's a bad habit. I suggested he replace them with low-sodium, carbonated water, adding fresh lemon, lime, or oranges. He did this for about a month before realizing he didn't need the carbonation at all, and switched to just plain water. Play with this, and see what behaviors you can replace, delete, or swap out. 4. Ease in. I live near the Pacific Ocean. Whenever I get in the water, I get my ankles acclimated first, then walk in up to my knees, then it's my waist and chest, before taking the plunge. Some people just run and dive in and get it over with. Good for them. Not me. I like to ease my way in. Probably residual trauma from my childhood, as you'll see in the next strategy. For some of your long-standing and deep-rooted habits, it may be more effective to take small steps to ease into unwinding them. You may have spent decades repeating, cementing, and fortifying those habits, so it can be wise to give yourself some time to unravel them, one step at a time. A few years ago, my wife's doctor required she cut out caffeine from her diet for several months. We both love our coffee, so if she was going to have to suffer, I decided it was only fair that we do it together. We first went to 50 to 50% decaffeinated and 50% regular for a week. Then 100% decaf for another week. Then Earl Grey decaf tea for a week, followed by decaf green tea. It took us a month to get there, But we didn't suffer even a moment of caffeine withdrawal. No headaches, no sleepiness, no brain fog, no nothing. However, if we had gone cold turkey, well, I shiver at the thought. 5. Jump in. Not everyone is wired the same way. Some researchers have found that it can be paradoxically easier for people to make lifestyle changes if they change a great many bad habits at once. For example, pioneering cardiologist Dr. Dean Ornish found he could reverse people's advanced heart disease without medication or surgery, with dramatic lifestyle changes. He discovered they often found it easier to say goodbye to almost all their bad habits at once. He enrolled them in a training session where he substituted a very low-fat diet for their fat and cholesterol-rich fare. The program included exercise, getting them off their couches and walking or jogging, as well as stress reduction techniques and other heart-healthy habits. Amazingly, in less than a month, these patients learned to let go of a lifetime of bad habits and embrace new ones, and they went on to experience dramatic health benefits after a year as a result. Personally, I find this to be the exception, not the rule, but you'll have to figure out the strategy that works best for you. When I was a kid, my family camped at a little-known spot called Lake Rollins. The lake, situated not far from the Sierras in Northern California, is fed from glaciers that melt from atop the mountains of Lake Tahoe. The water's ridiculously cold. Every day we were there, my dad insisted that I water ski in the polar pond. All day I would be quietly anxious about the dreaded call to go in. I loved to water ski. I just hated getting in the water. A slight conflict of interest, because of course, there was no separating one from the other. Dad made sure that I never missed my turn, sometimes by actually physically throwing me in. After a dozen or so excruciating seconds of near hypothermia, I always found the water refreshing and rejuvenating. My anticipation of getting in the water was actually worse than the reality of just jumping in. Once my body acclimated, water skiing was a blast. And, yet, I went through this cycle of dread and relief each and every time. That experience isn't unlike that of suddenly dropping or changing a bad habit. For a short while it can feel excruciating, or at least quite uncomfortable. But just as the body adjusts to a changing environment through a process called homeostasis, we have a similar homeostatic ability to adjust to unfamiliar behavior changes. And usually, we can regulate ourselves physiologically and psychologically to the new circumstances quite quickly. Sometimes waiting in just won't do. Sometimes you really do have to jump in. I want you to ask yourself now, where can I start slow and hold myself accountable? And where do I need to take that bigger leap? Where have I been avoiding pain or discomfort, when I know deep down that I'll adapt in no time if I just go for it? One of my former partners has a brother who was a beer-guzzling, bar-brawling, life-of-the-party alcoholic. He drank at lunch, with dinner, after dinner, and all weekend long. One day he was at a wedding for a former college roommate when he saw his friend's brother, who was 10 years older than both of them, but looked 10 years younger. He watched the man dance, laugh, and play during the wedding, exuding a vitality he hadn't felt in many years. He made a decision on the spot that he would never touch a drop of alcohol again. Cold turkey, that was it, never again. And he hasn't in more than 6 years. When it comes to changing bad habits at home, I'm a toe dipper. But in my professional life, I find that taking the big plunge is far more effective. Whether committing to a new business or dealing with potential new clients, partners, or investors, toe dipping usually doesn't cut it. Each time, I think of Lake Rollins and know it will be painful at first, but I remember that within little time, it will be exhilarating and well worth the temporary discomfort. Run a vice check. I'm not suggesting you cut out every bad thing in your life. Most everything is good in moderation. But how can you tell whether a bad habit is becoming the boss of you? I believe in testing my vices. Every so often I go on a vice fast. I pick one vice and check to be sure I'm still the alpha dog in our relationship. My vices are coffee, ice cream, wine, and movies. I already told you about my ice cream obsession. When it comes to wine, I want to be sure I'm enjoying a glass and celebrating the day, not drowning a bad mood. About every 3 months, I pick one vice and abstain for 30 days. This probably stems from my Catholic Lent upbringing. I love proving to myself that I'm still in charge. Try this yourself. Pick a vice. Something you do in moderation, but you know doesn't contribute to your highest good, and take yourself on a 30-day wagon run. If you find it seriously difficult to abstain for those 30 days, you may have found a habit worth cutting out of your life. Game changers. 6 techniques for installing good habits. Now that we have helped you eliminate the bad habits that are taking you in the wrong direction, we need to create new choices, behaviors, and ultimately habits that will finally take you in the direction of your grandest desires. Eliminating a bad habit means removing something from your routine. Installing a new, more productive habit requires an entirely different skill set. You're planting the tree, watering it, fertilizing it, and making sure it's properly rooted. Doing so takes effort, time, and practice. Here are my favorite techniques for putting good habits in place. Leadership expert John C. Maxwell said, "You will never change your life until you change something you do daily." The secret of your success is found in your daily routine. According to research, it takes 300 instances of positive reinforcement to turn a new habit into an unconscious practice. That's almost a year of daily practice. Fortunately, as we talked about earlier, we know we've got a much better chance of cementing a new habit into our lives after 3 weeks of diligent focus. That means that if we bring special attention to a new habit daily for the first 3 weeks, we have a far better chance of making it a lifelong practice. The truth is, you can change a habit in a second, or you can still be trying to break it after 10 long years. The first time you touched a hot stove, you instantly knew you'd never make that a habit. The shock and pain was so intense that it forever changed your awareness. You knew you'd be conscious for the rest of your life around hot stoves. The key is staying aware. If you really want to maintain a good habit, make sure you pay attention to it at least once a day, and you're far more likely to succeed. 1. Set yourself up to succeed. Any new habit has to work inside your life and lifestyle. If you join a gym that's 30 miles away, you won't go. If you're a night owl but the gym closes at 6 p.m., it won't work for you. Your gym must be close and convenient, and fit into your schedule. If you want to lose weight and eat healthier, make sure your fridge and pantry are stocked with healthy options. Want to make sure you don't binge on vending machine snacks when you get midday hunger pangs? Keep nuts and healthy snacks in your desk drawer. The easiest thing to grab when you're hungry is empty carbs. One strategy I use is to have protein on hand. I cook up a bunch of chicken on Sunday and package it and have it ready for the week. One of my most distracting and destructive habits is my email addiction. Seriously, this is no laughing matter. I can lose hours of focus every day with the massive amounts of email flooding my inbox if I'm not vigilant about staying organized and focused. To set up the discipline of my new habit of only checking email 3 times a day, I turned off all alarms, all automatic receive functions, and shut the program down when I'm not in one of those 3 windows of allocated time. I have to build the walls around that time vortex, lest I keep falling in all day. 2. Think addition, not subtraction. When I interviewed Montel Williams for Success, he told me about the strict diet he maintains because of the disease that afflicts him, multiple sclerosis. Montel has adopted something called the add-in principle, and I think it's a wildly effective tool for anyone with any goal. It's not so much what you attempt to take out of your diet, he explained to me. It's what you put in instead. This has become his analogy for life. Instead of thinking that he has to deprive himself or take something out of his diet, I can't eat a hamburger, chocolate, or dairy. He thinks about what he can have instead. Today I'm going to have a salad and steamed vegetables and fresh figs. He fills his focus and his belly with what he can have, so he no longer has attention or hunger for what he can't. Instead of focusing on what he has to sacrifice, Montel thinks about what he gets to add in. The result is a lot more powerful. A friend of mine wanted to break his bad habit of wasting too much time watching TV. To help out, I asked him what he'd like to do with 3 hours of free time if he had it. He said he would play with his kids more. I also asked him to pick a hobby he'd always wanted to explore. His choice was photography. A total techie, he went out and got all this high-tech editing equipment, which he happily toted along on more family outings so he could take great photos of his kids. Then he'd spend hours in the evening editing and putting together slideshows and photo albums for the whole family to enjoy. They ended up spending time together, laughing and remembering how much fun they'd had. Because he was so focused on his kids and photography, he no longer had the time nor the desire to sit around and watch TV at night. He realized he'd been zoning out on it because it was an easy mental escape from his workday. By replacing TV viewing with his new habit of playing games with his kids and working on his photography hobby, he discovered passions with far more power and far bigger payoffs. What can you choose to add in so you can enrich your life experience? 3. Go for a PDA, public display of accountability. Picture any public official taking the oath of office. I do solemnly swear, and then comes the speech on how she'll turn her campaign promises into boots on the ground realities. Once she puts it out there on the public record, she knows that she'll be held responsible for any action that rolls back on her promises and praised for any progress toward her goals. Want to cement that new habit? Get Big Brother to watch you. It's never been easier with all the social media available. I heard about one woman who decided to get control of her finances by blogging about every penny she spends every day. She's got her family, friends, and plenty of colleagues following her spending habits, and as a result of the many eyes of scrutiny, she's become far more responsible and disciplined in her finances. I once helped a coworker quit smoking by telling everyone at the company, "Listen up. Zelda's decided to stop smoking. Isn't that great? She just smoked her last cigarette." I then placed a huge wall calendar on the outside of her cubicle. Every day she didn't smoke, Zelda got to draw a big fat red X on the calendar. Coworkers took notice and started to cheer her on, and the parade of big red X's started to fill up the chart, which took on a life of its own. Zelda didn't want to quit on that chart, quit on her coworkers, or quit on herself. But she did quit smoking. Tell your family, tell your friends, tell Facebook and Twitter. Get the word out that there's a new sheriff in town and you're in charge. 4. Find a success buddy. There are few things as powerful as two people locked arm in arm marching toward the same goal. To up your chances of success, get a success buddy, someone who'll keep you accountable as you cement your new habit while you return the favor. I, for example, have what I call a peak performance partner. Every Friday at 11 a.m. sharp, we have a 30-minute call during which we trade our wins, losses, fixes, ahas, and solicit the needed feedback and hold each other accountable. You might seek out a success buddy for regular walks, runs, or dates at the gym, or to meet to discuss and trade personal development books. 5. Competition and camaraderie. There's nothing like a friendly contest to whet your competitive spirit and immerse yourself in a new habit with a bang. Dr. Mehmet Oz once told me in an interview, if people would just walk 1,000 more steps per day, they would change their lives. Video Plus, the parent company for Success, held a step competition using shoe pedometers to count steps. Employees organized into teams and competed to see which team could accumulate the most steps. It was amazing to me that people who didn't previously exercise for their own health or benefit suddenly started walking 4, 5, or 6 miles a day. At lunch, they walked in the parking lot. If they knew they had a conference call, suddenly they were out doing it on their cell phones while they walked. Because of the competition, they found ways to increase their activity. Everyone's steps were tracked, and the whole office could see who was slacking off and who was stepping up. People's step tallies increased every day. Yet as soon as the competition was over, I was fascinated to observe that the step count completely dropped off the cliff, by more than 60% just 1 month after the competition. When the competition was reorganized again, the step count shot right back up. All it took was a little competition to keep people's engines revved, and they got a wonderful sense of community and shared experience and camaraderie in the bargain. What kind of friendly competition can you organize with your friends, colleagues, or teammates? How can you inject fun rivalry and a competitive spirit into your new habit? 6. Celebrate. All work and no play make Jack a dull boy, and it's a recipe for backsliding. There should be a time to celebrate, to enjoy some of the fruits of your victories along the way. You can't go through this thing sacrificing yourself with no benefit. You've got to find little rewards to give yourself every month, every week, every day. Even something small to acknowledge that you've held yourself to a new behavior. Maybe time to yourself to take a walk, relax in the bath, or read something just for fun. For bigger milestones, book a massage or have dinner at your favorite restaurant. And promise yourself a nice big pot of gold when you reach the end of the rainbow. Change is hard. Yippee! There is a one thing that 99% of failures and successful folks have in common. They all hate doing the same things. The difference is successful people do them anyway. Change is hard. That's why people don't transform their bad habits, and why so many people end up unhappy and unhealthy. What excites me about this reality, however, is that if change were easy, and everyone were doing it, it would be much more difficult for you and me to stand out and become an extraordinary success. Ordinary is easy. Extraordinary is what will separate you from the crowd. Personally, I'm always happy when something is hard. Why? Because I know that most people won't do what it takes. Therefore, it will be easier for me to step in front of the pack and take the lead. I love what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said so eloquently. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge. When you press on despite difficulty, tedium, and hardship, that's when you earn your improvement and gain strides on the competition. If it's hard, awkward, or tedious, so be it. Just do it, and keep doing it, and the magic of the compound effect will reward you handsomely. Be patient. When it comes to breaking old bad habits and starting new ones, remember to be patient with yourself. If you've spent 20, 30, or 40 years or more repeating the behaviors you're now trying to change, you've got to expect it's going to take time and effort before you see lasting results. Science shows that patterns of thoughts and actions repeated many times create what's called a neurosignature or a brain groove, or a series of interconnected neurons that carry the thought patterns of a particular habit. Attention feeds the habit. When we give our attention to a habit, we activate the brain groove, releasing the thoughts, desires, and actions related to that habit. Luckily, our brains are malleable. If we stop giving attention to the bad habits, those grooves weaken. When we form new habits, we drive new grooves deeper with each repetition, eventually overpowering the previous ones. Creating new habits and burning new grooves into your brain will take time. Be patient with yourself. If you fall off the wagon, brush yourself off, not beat yourself up, and get back on. No problem. We all stumble. Just go again and try another strategy. Reinforce your commitment and consistency. When you press on, you will receive huge payoffs. Speaking of payoffs, the next chapter is where we really start breaking away from the herd, where the multiplying effect really takes shape. With all the disciplined effort you've applied from the fundamentals of the first 3 chapters, here's where you get rewarded, big time. Chapter 4, Momentum. I'd like to introduce you to a very good friend of mine. This friend, also close to Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, Michael Jordan, Lance Armstrong, Michael Phelps, and every other superachiever, will impact your life like no other. I'd like to introduce you to Mo, or Big Mo, as I like to call it. Big Mo is, without doubt, one of the most powerful and enigmatic forces of success. You can't see or feel Mo, but you know when you've got it. You can't count on Mo showing up to every occasion, but when it does, wow. Big Mo can catapult you into the stratosphere of success. And once you've got Mo on your side, there's almost no way anyone can catch you. I'm excited about this chapter. When you implement the ideas outlined ahead, your payoff will be 1,000 times, or more, what you paid for this book. Seriously, these ideas are big. Harnessing the power of Big Mo. If you remember your high school physics class, you do, don't you? You'll recall Newton's first law, also known as the law of inertia. Objects at rest tend to stay at rest unless acted on by an outside force. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion unless something stops their momentum. Put another way, couch potatoes tend to stay couch potatoes. Achievers, people who get into a successful rhythm, continue busting their butts and end up achieving more and more. It's not easy to build momentum, but once you do, look out. Do you remember playing on merry-go-rounds when you were a kid? A bunch of your friends piled on, weighing the thing down, and then chanted as you worked to get the thing moving. Getting started was slow going. The first step was always the hardest, getting it to move from a standstill. You had to push and pull, grimace and groan, and throw your entire body into the effort. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, it seemed like you were getting nowhere. After a long and hard effort, finally you were able to get up a little bit of speed and run alongside it. Even though you were moving, and your friends were cheering louder, to get the speed you really wanted, you had to keep running faster and faster, pulling it behind you as you ran with all your might. Finally, success. You jumped on and joined your friends in the joy of feeling the wind in your face and watching the outside world turn into a smear of colors. After a while, when the merry-go-round started to slow down, you'd hop off and run alongside for a minute to get the speed back up. Or you could simply give it a couple good pushes and then hop back on. Once the merry-go-round was spinning at a good clip, momentum took over, making it easy to keep it going. Adopting any change is the same way. You get started by taking one small step, one action at a time. Progress is slow, but once a newly formed habit has kicked in, Big Mo joins the party. Your success and results compound rapidly. The same thing happens when a rocket ship launches. The space shuttle uses more fuel during the first few minutes of its flight than it does the rest of the entire trip. Why? Because it has to break free from the pull of gravity. Once it does, it can glide in orbit. The hard part? Getting off the ground. Your old ways and your old conditioning are just like the inertia of the merry-go-round or the pull of gravity. Everything just wants to stay at rest. You'll need a lot of energy to break your inertia and get your new enterprise underway. But once you get momentum, you will be hard to stop, virtually unbeatable, even though you're now putting out considerably less effort while receiving greater results. Ever wonder why successful people tend to get more successful? The rich get richer, the happy get happier, the lucky get luckier. They've got Mo. When it rains, it pours. But momentum works on both sides of the equation. It can work for you or against you. Since the compound effect is always working, negative habits, when left unchecked, can build up steam and send you into a tailspin of unlucky circumstances and consequences. That's what our friend Brad from Chapter 1 experienced. He gained 33 pounds with a few small bad habits and experienced major job and marriage stress because of the negative momentum those habits generated. The law of inertia says objects at rest tend to stay at rest. That's the compound effect working against you. The more time you spend sitting on that couch watching 2.5 Men, the harder it will be for you to get up and get moving. So let's start right now. How do you get Big Mo to pay you a visit? You build up to it. You get into the groove, the zone, by doing the things we've covered so far. 1. Making new choices based on your goals and core values. 2. Putting those choices to work through new positive behaviors. 3. Repeating those healthy actions long enough to establish new habits. 4. Building routines and rhythms into your daily disciplines. 5. Staying consistent over a long enough period of time, then, bang. Big Mo kicks in your door. That's a good thing. And you're virtually unstoppable. Think about swimmer Michael Phelps, who won a legendary 8 gold medals at the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing. How did he do it? Working with his coach, Bob Bowman, Phelps honed his talents over the course of 12 years. Together, they built routines and rhythms, and developed a consistency of performance that prepared Phelps to catch momentum just at the right time, the Olympic Games. Phelps and Bowman's symbiotic relationship is legendary for its scope and ambition, and its utter predictability. Bowman required such consistency when it came to practice that one of Phelps' most vivid memories is when Bowman allowed him to finish a training session 15 minutes early so he could get ready for a middle school dance. That's one time in 12 years. No wonder Phelps was so unbeatable in the pool. Chances are you have an iPod. Ever think about the evolution that made it possible for that little gizmo to wind up in your pocket? Apple was around a long time before they launched the iPod. While Mac computers have always had an intensely loyal following, they still comprise a small fraction of the overall PC market. The iPod certainly wasn't the first MP3 player out there. Apple was actually late to the game. But they had something powerful going for them. The consistency of their efforts in maintaining customer loyalty, a steadfast commitment to high quality, innovative design, and ease of use. They made the MP3 player simple, cool, easy to use and play with, and promoted it through entertaining and inventive ad campaigns. It worked, it hit a nerve, but the iPod wasn't an overnight success. In 2001, the year Apple released the iPod, they went from 30% revenue growth the year previous to minus 33%. The following year, 2002, was also a negative revenue growth year at minus 2%. But 2003 saw a shift to a positive 18%. Growth came again in 2004, up to 33%. And in 2005, they caught Mo and bang. Apple catapulted to 68% revenue growth and now holds more than 70% of the MP3 player market share. As you know, Big Mo has since helped them dominate the smartphone market with the iPhone and digital music distribution with iTunes. This momentum has also given them a resurgence of growth in their original market of personal computers. With Big Mo on their side, I wouldn't be surprised to see them expand into other markets. Google was a small, struggling search engine for a while. Today it, too, owns more than 60% of its market. YouTube, the video sharing space created in February 2005, officially launched in November of that year. But it wasn't until they featured the Lazy Sunday digital short that originally aired on Saturday Night Live that people started going to YouTube in huge numbers to find it. That YouTube video clip went viral. It got more than 5 million views before NBC asked to have it taken down. Then, there was no way to catch them. They had Mo. Today, YouTube owns more than 60% of the video market. Google caught up with YouTube's two young founders and paid them $1.65 billion to buy their Mo. Wow, what do Michael Phelps, Apple, Google, and YouTube have in common? They were doing the same things before and after they achieved momentum. Their habits, disciplines, routines, and consistency were the keys that unlocked momentum for each. And they became unstoppable when Big Mo showed up to their party. Routine power. Some of our best intentions fail because we don't have a system of execution. When it comes down to it, your new attitudes and behaviors must be incorporated into your monthly, weekly, and daily routines to effect any real, positive change. A routine is something you do every day without fail, so that eventually, like brushing your teeth or putting on your seatbelt, you do it without conscious thought. Similar to our discussion in the habits section, if you look at anything you do that's successful, you'll see that you've probably developed a routine for it. These routines ease life's stresses by making our actions automatic and effective. To reach new goals and develop new habits, it's necessary to create new routines to support your objectives. The greater the challenge, the more rigorous our routines need to be. Ever wonder why military boot camp is so hard? Where relatively minor tasks like making the bed, shining your shoes, or standing at attention become over the top important? Building routines to prep soldiers for combat is the most effective way to elicit efficient, productive, and reliable performance under intense pressure. The seemingly simplistic routines built and developed during basic training are so exact that soft, fearful, slovenly teenagers are transformed into lean, confident, mission-driven soldiers in only 8 to 12 weeks. Their routines are so well rehearsed that these young soldiers can instinctively act with precision in the middle of the chaos of combat. That intense level of training and practice prepares soldiers to carry out their duties, even under the threat of imminent death. Now, your days might not be as dangerous, but without the proper routines built into your schedule, the results of your life can be unruly and unnecessarily hard. Developing a routine of predictable, daily disciplines prepares you to be victorious on the battlefield of life. Golfer Jack Nicklaus was famous for his pre-shot routine. He was religious about the dance he would do before every shot, a series of routine mental and physical steps that got him fully focused and ready for the shot. Jack would start out behind the ball, and then pick out one or two intermediate spots between the ball and the target. As he walked around and approached the ball, the first thing he would do is line up his club face to his intermediate target. He wouldn't put his feet into position until he felt he had his club face properly squared up. Then he would take his stance. From there, he would waggle the club and look out to his target, then back to his intermediate target and back to the golf club, with a repeat of the view. Then, and only then, would he strike the ball. During one of the important majors, a psychologist timed Nicklaus from the moment he pulled the club out of the bag until the moment he hit the ball, and guess what? In each shot, from the first tee to the 18th green, the timing of Jack's routine supposedly never varied more than 1 second. That is amazing. The same psychologist measured Greg Norman during his unfortunate collapse at the 1996 Masters. Lo and behold, his pre-shot routine got faster and faster as the round progressed. Varying his routine stunted his rhythm and consistency. He was never able to catch momentum. The moment Norman changed his routine, his performance became unpredictable and his results erratic. Football kickers likewise cherish their pre-kick routines, which allow them to get into sync with the thousands of times they have done this same action. Predictably, without a pre-kick routine, their performance under time pressure greatly diminishes. Pilots go through their pre-flight checklist. Even when a pilot has logged thousands of hours and the plane just came in with a perfect performance review from a previous destination, the pilot goes through a pre-flight checklist every time without fail. This not only prepares the plane, but, more important, centers the pilot and prepares him for the upcoming performance. Of all the high achievers and business owners I've worked with, I've seen that, along with good habits, each has developed routines for accomplishing necessary daily disciplines. It's the only way any of us can predictably regulate our behavior. There simply isn't any way around it. A daily routine built on good habits and disciplines separates the most successful among us from everyone else. A routine is exceptionally powerful. To create profitable and effective routines, you must first decide what behaviors and habits you want to implement. Take a moment to review your goals from Chapter 3, as well as the behaviors you want to add and subtract. Now it's your turn to be Jack Nicklaus and figure out your best pre-shot routine. Be intentional about what components belong. Once you establish, say, a morning routine, I want you to consider it cast in concrete until further notice. You get up, you do it, no argument. If someone or something interrupts you, start back at the beginning to anchor your foundation for the performance that follows. Bookend your days. The key to becoming world-class in your endeavors is to build your performance around world-class routines. It can be difficult, even futile, to predict or control what will show up in the middle of your workday. But you can almost always control how your day starts and ends. I have routines for both. I'll share aspects of each here to give you some ideas and to help you better understand the power and importance of building your new behaviors into disciplined routines. Starting with my goals in mind, I designed my behaviors and routines accordingly. Perhaps in sharing some of what works for me, you'll identify strategies you'd like to try. Rise and shine. My morning routine is my Jack Nicklaus pre-shot preparation. It sets me up for the entire day. Because it happens every morning, it's locked in and I don't have to think about it. My iPhone alarm goes off at 5 a.m. Confession. Sometimes 5:30 a.m. and I hit the snooze button. Then I know I have 8 minutes. Why 8? I have no idea. Ask Steve Jobs. He programmed it. During those 8 minutes I do 3 things. First, I think of all the things I'm grateful for. I know I need to attune my mind to abundance. The world looks, acts, and responds to you very differently when you start your day with a feeling and orientation of gratitude for that which you already have. Second, I do something that sounds a bit odd, but I send love to someone. The way to get love is to give it, and one thing I want more of is love. I give love by thinking of one person. Anyone, it could be a friend, relative, coworker, or someone I just met in the supermarket. It doesn't matter. And then I send them love by imagining all that I wish and hope for them. Some would call this a blessing or a prayer. I call it a mental love letter. Third, I think about my number one goal and decide which 3 things I'm going to do on this day to move closer toward reaching it. For example, at the time of this writing, my number one goal is to deepen the love and intimacy in my marriage. Each morning I plan 3 things I can do to make sure that my wife feels loved, respected, and beautiful. When I get up, I put on a pot of coffee, and while it's brewing, I do a series of stretches for about 10 minutes, something I picked up from Dr. Oz. If you've lifted weights your whole life as I have, you get stiff. I realized that the only way I was going to incorporate more stretching into my life was to make it a routine. I had to figure out where in my schedule one could stick it in, and while the coffee's brewing is as good a time as any. Once I've stretched and poured my cup, I sit in my comfy leather recliner, set my iPhone for 30 minutes, no more, no less, and read something positive and instructional. When the alarm sounds, I take my most important project and work on it for an hour of completely focused and undistracted effort. Notice I haven't opened email yet. Then, every morning at 7 a.m., I have what I call my calibration appointment, a recurring appointment set in my calendar, where I take 15 minutes to calibrate my day. This is where I brush over my top 3 1-year and 5-year goals, my key quarterly objectives, and my top goal for the week and month. Then, for the most important part of the calibration appointment, I review, or set, my top 3 MVPs, most valuable priorities, for that day, asking myself, if I only did 3 things today, what are the actions that will produce the greatest results in moving me closer to my big goals? Then, and only then, do I open email and send out a flurry of tasks and delegations to get the rest of my team started on their day. I then quickly close down my email and go to work on my MVPs. The rest of the day can take a million different shapes, but as long as I go through my morning routine, a majority of the key disciplines I need to be practicing are taken care of, and I'm properly grounded and prepared to perform at a much higher level than if I started each day erratically, or worse, with a set of bad habits. Sweet dreams. In the evening I like to cash out, something I learned from waiting tables in my youth. Before we could go home, we had to cash out, meaning turn in all our receipts, credit card slips, and cash. Everything had to add up, or there was big trouble. It's important to cash out your day's performance. Compared to your plan for the day, how did it go? What do you need to carry over to tomorrow's plan? What else needs to be added, based on what showed up throughout the day. What's no longer important and needs to be scratched out. Additionally, I like to log into my journal any new ideas, ahas or insights I picked up throughout the day. This is how I've collected more than 40 journals of incredible ideas, insights, and strategies. Finally, I like to read at least 10 pages of an inspirational book before going to sleep. I know the mind continues to process the last information consumed before bedtime, so I want to focus my attention on something constructive and helpful in making progress with my goals and ambitions. That's it. All hell can break loose throughout the day, but because I control the bookends, I know I'm always going to start and finish strong. Shake it up. Every so often I like to interrupt my routines. Otherwise, life gets stale and I plateau. An easy example is working out with weights. When I work out the same way at the same time, doing the same repetitive movements week after week, my body stops showing compounded results. I get bored, lose my passion, and Big Mo is a no-show. That's why it's important to mix it up, challenge yourself in new ways, and freshen up your experience. Right now I'm working on adding more adventure into my life. I set weekly, monthly, and yearly goals to do something I wouldn't normally do. Most of the time it's nothing earth-shattering, but things such as eating different kinds of foods, taking a class, visiting a new destination, or joining a club to meet new people. This change of pace makes me feel alive, helps recapture my passion, and offers me opportunities for fresh perspectives. Look at your routines. If something that used to energize you has become same old, or is no longer generating powerful results, switch it up. Getting into a rhythm. Finding your new groove. Once your daily disciplines have become a routine, you want the succession of those steps to create a rhythm. When your disciplines and actions jibe into a regular weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly rhythm, it's like laying a welcome mat at the front door for Big Mo. It's like the wheels of a steam locomotive. At a standstill, it takes very little to keep it from moving forward. A 1-inch block of wood placed under the front wheel will do the job. It takes an incredible amount of steam to get the pistons to move and cause a series of connections that get the wheels to budge. It's a slow process, but once the train starts rolling, the wheels get into a rhythm. If the pressure remains consistent, the train gains momentum, and watch out. At 55 miles an hour, that train can crash through a 5-foot, steel-reinforced concrete wall and keep on going. Envisioning your success as an unstoppable locomotive may help you stay enthusiastic about getting into your own rhythm. Along with my daily rhythms, I also plan ahead. For instance, in looking again at my goal of deepening the love and intimacy of my marriage, I designed a weekly, monthly, and quarterly rhythm schedule. Doesn't sound too romantic, I know. But maybe you've noticed that, even when something's a high priority for you, if it isn't scheduled on your calendar, it often doesn't happen, right? Certainly not with the regularity you'll need to get into any kind of rhythm. Here's how it works. Every Friday night is date night, and Georgia and I go out or do something special together. At 6 p.m., an alarm goes off on both our iPhones, and no matter what we're doing, date night is on. Every Saturday is FD, Family Day, which means no working. Essentially, sundown on Friday night until sunup on Sunday morning is time we devote to the marriage and family. If you don't create these boundaries, one day has a tendency to flow into the next. Unfortunately, the people who get shoved aside are often the most important. Every Sunday night, also at 6 p.m., we have our RR, relationship review. This is a practice I picked up from relationship experts Linda and Richard Eyre during an interview I did with them for our October 2009 Success audio series. During this time, we discuss the previous week's wins, losses, as well as the adjustments we need to make in our relationship. We start the conversation by telling each other a few things we have appreciated about the other during the previous week. It's helpful to start with the good stuff. Then, using an idea I picked up from my interview with Jack Canfield, we ask each other, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, how would you rate our relationship this week? This gets the discussion of wins and losses flowing. Oh, boy. Then we discuss the adjustments that need to be made through this follow-up question. What would it take to make your experience a 10? By the end of the discussion, both of us feel heard and validated, and we have made our observations and wishes clear moving into the next week. This is an incredible process. I highly recommend it, if you dare. Every month, Georgia and I also schedule something unique and memorable. Jim Rohn taught me that life is simply a collection of experiences. Our goal should be to increase the frequency and the intensity of the good experiences. Once a month, we try to do something that creates an experience that has some memorable intensity. It could be driving up to the mountains, going on an adventurous hike, driving up to Los Angeles to try a new fancy restaurant, going sailing in the bay, whatever. Something out of the ordinary that has a heightened experience and creates an indelible memory. Once a quarter, we plan a 2 to 3 day getaway. I like to do a quarterly review of all my goals and life patterns, and this is a great time to do a deeper check-in on how things are going in our relationship. Then we have our special travel vacation, plus our holiday traditions and our New Year's hike and goal-setting ritual. You can see that once all this is scheduled, you no longer have to think about what you need to be doing. Everything happens naturally. We've created a rhythm that gives us momentum, the rhythms of life. When people get started in a new endeavor, they almost always overdo it. Of course, I want you to feel excited about setting up a rhythm for success, but you need to find a program that you can absolutely, positively do in the long term without renegotiation. I don't want you thinking of the rhythms you can do for this week, month, or even the next 90 days. I want you to think about what you can do for the rest of your life. The compound effect, the positive results you want to experience in your life, will be the result of smart choices and actions, repeated consistently over time. You win when you take the right steps day in and day out. But you set yourself up for failure by doing too much too soon. A friend to the success team, who will remain unnamed to protect the guilty, decided after seeing a picture I'd posted of him on Twitter that he was going to get in shape. This was a massive shift of lifestyle for him. On the job, he sits for at least a dozen hours a day, and he hates to exercise. Previously, he'd explained that he would find ways of avoiding using certain dishes or accessing files if it required him to squat and bend down to get them. That's how much of an aversion he had to physical activity. Still, he made a resolution to get in shape. He joined a gym, hired a personal trainer, and began working out 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. Richard, let's call him, I said, that's a mistake. You will not be able to maintain that commitment and will eventually stop doing it. You're setting yourself up for failure. He pushed back, assuring me that he'd changed forever. Even his trainer had recommended the intense push. I'm committed, he said. I want to be able to see my abs. Richard, what's your real goal? I asked him. I knew he wasn't gunning to be on the cover of Men's Fitness. I want to be trim. I want to be healthy, he told me. Why? I asked. I want vitality. "I want to be here long enough to see my kids have kids," he replied. These were his real, meaningful motivations. Richard wanted to be in it for the long haul. That meant he was signing on not for bikini season, but a long-term commitment to fitness. "Okay," I said, "you've convinced me, but you're overdoing it. You're going to get 2 or 3 months down the road, and you're going to say, 'I don't have 2 hours to work out, so I guess I can't do it today.' That's going to happen to you over and over again. Working out 5 days a week will turn into 2 or 3, and you'll get discouraged. Soon it will be over. I know you're really fired up right now, so let's do this. Do your 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. For now, takes a lot of steam to get the wheels to budge from the inertia, but don't do it longer than 60 or 90 days. Then, I want you to scale it down to an hour or an hour and 15. You can still do your 5 days a week, but I would probably encourage you to go 4. Do that another 60 to 90 days. Then I want you to consider an hour a day for a minimum of 3 days a week, 4 if you're feeling extra spry. That's the program I want you to work toward, because if you don't get into something you can maintain, you won't do it at all." I really had to struggle to get Richard to comprehend this because, at that moment, he was all gung-ho. He thought he was going to be able to stick with his new routine for a lifetime. For someone who's never worked out, to start working out 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, is a surefire dead end. You have to build a program that you can do for 50 years, not 5 weeks or 5 months. It's okay if you go strong for a while, but you've got to see light at the end of the tunnel where you can start scaling it back. You can always find 45 minutes to an hour a few times a week, but to find 2 hours, 5 days a week, to make your routine work, that'll never happen. Remember, consistency is a critical component of success. The power of consistency. I've mentioned that if there's one discipline that gives me a competitive advantage, it's my ability to be consistent. Nothing kills Big Mo quicker and with more certainty than a lack of consistency. Even good, passionate, and ambitious people with good intentions can fall short when it comes to consistency. But it's a powerful tool you can use to launch the flight toward your goals. Think of it like this. If you and I flew planes from Los Angeles to Manhattan, but you took off and landed in every state in between, while I flew straight through, even if you went 500 miles per hour in the air and I only traveled at a rate of 200 miles per hour, I'd still beat you by a big margin. The time and energy it takes for you to repeatedly stop and start and get back to momentum make your trip at least 10 times as long. In fact, most likely you wouldn't even make it. You'd run out of fuel, energy, motivation, belief, will, at some point. It's far easier and requires a lot less energy to take off once and maintain a regular speed, even if slower than most everyone else, all along the way. The pump well. When you start thinking about slacking off on your routines and rhythms, consider the massive cost of inconsistency. It is not the loss of the single action and tiny results it creates. It is the utter collapse and loss of momentum your entire progress will suffer. Think of a hand-pumped water well, which uses a pipe to draw water up from the water table several feet underground. To get the water to the surface, you have to pump the well's lever to create the suction that brings the water above the ground and out of the spout. When most people start a new endeavor, they grab the lever and start pumping really hard. Just as Richard was with his plan to get fit, they're excited and committed. They pump and pump and pump, but after a few minutes, or a few weeks, when they don't see any water results, they give up pumping the lever altogether. They don't realize how long it takes to create the vacuum needed to suck the water into the pipe and eventually out of the spout and into their bucket. Just like the merry-go-round, rocket ship, or steam engine breaking free of inertia, it takes time, massive energy, and consistency to pump water. Most people give up, but wise people continue to pump. Those who persevere and continue to pump the lever will eventually get a few drops of water. This is when a lot of people say, "You've got to be kidding me. All this pumping, and for what? A few measly drops." Forget it. Many people throw their hands up in defeat and quit, but wise people persist further. And here's where the magic happens. If you continue to pump, it doesn't take long before you'll get a full and steady stream of water. You have your success. Now that the water is flowing, you no longer need to pump the lever as hard or as quickly. It becomes easy, actually. All you have to do to keep the pressure steady is to just pump the lever consistently. That's the compound effect. Now, what happens if you let go of the lever for too long? The water falls back down into the ground, and you're back to square one. If you try to pump the lever easily and steadily, you won't get any water. Mo is gone. Water is at the bottom. The only way to get it back up is to pump it really hard all over again. That's how most of us led our lives, in fits and starts. We get a new business venture going, and then cut out on vacation. We start up a routine of making 10 prospecting calls a day, strike a little gold, and then shift into neutral. We get hopped up about our new date night routine with our spouse, but in a few weeks, it's back to Netflix and microwave popcorn on the couch Friday nights. I see people buy a new book, sign up for a new program or seminar, and go like crazy for a couple of weeks or months. Then they stop and end up right back where they started. Sound familiar? Miss only a couple weeks of anything. Workouts at the gym, affectionate gestures toward your spouse, or the phone calls that are part of your prospecting routine. And you don't just lose the results those 2 weeks would have produced. If that's all you lost, which is what most people assume, not much damage would be done. But by slacking off for even a short time, you killed Mo. It's dead, and that's a tragedy. Winning the race is all about pace. Be the tortoise, the person who, given enough time, will beat virtually anybody in any competition as a result of positive habits and behaviors applied consistently. That'll put the mojo in your momentum. And keep it there, making the right choice, holding to right behaviors, practicing perfect habits, staying consistent, and keeping your momentum is easier said than done, especially in the dynamic, constantly changing, and always challenging world we share with billions of other people. In the next chapter, I will discuss the many influences that, mostly unknowingly, can help or hinder your ability to succeed. These influences are pervasive, persuasive, and constant. Learn how to use them or you might end up losing because of them. Let me show you how. Chapter 5: Influences. Hopefully by now you understand exactly how important your choices are. Even those that seem insignificant, when compounded, can make an extreme impact on your life. We've also discussed the fact that you are 100% responsible for your life. You alone are responsible for the choices you make and the actions you take. That said, you must also realize your choices, behaviors, and habits are influenced by very powerful external forces. Most of us aren't aware of the subtle control these forces have on our lives. For you to sustain your positive trajectory toward your goals, you'll need to understand and govern these influences so they will support rather than derail your journey toward success. Everyone is affected by 3 kinds of influences. Input, what you feed your mind; associations, the people with whom you spend time; and environment, your surroundings. Input. Garbage in. Garbage out. If you want your body to run at peak performance, you've got to be vigilant about consuming the highest quality nutrients and avoiding tempting junk food. If you want your brain to perform at its peak, you've got to be even more vigilant about what you feed it. Are you feeding it news summaries or mind-numbing sitcoms? Are you reading the tabloids or success? Controlling the input has a direct and measurable impact on your productivity and outcomes. Controlling what our brains consume is especially difficult because so much of what we take in is unconscious. Although it's true that we can eat without thinking, it's easier to pay attention to what we put in our bodies because food doesn't leap into our mouths. We need an extra level of vigilance to prevent our brains from absorbing irrelevant, counterproductive, or downright destructive input. It's a never-ending battle to be selective and to stand guard against any information that can derail your creative potential. Your brain is not designed to make you happy. Your brain has only one agenda in mind: survival. It is always watching for signs of lack and attack. Your brain is programmed to seek out the negative, dwindling resources, destructive weather, whatever's out to hurt you. So when you switch on that radio on the way to work and get bombarded with all those reports about robberies, fires, attacks, the tanking economy, your brain lights up. It now will spend all day chewing over that feast of fear, worry, negativity. Same deal when you tune into the evening news after work. More bad news? Perfect. Your mind will stew on that all night long. Left to its own devices, your mind will traffic in the negative, worrisome, and fearful all day and night. We can't change our DNA, but we can change our behavior. We can teach our minds to look beyond lack and attack. How? We can protect and feed our mind. We can be disciplined and proactive about what we allow in. Don't drink dirty water. You get in life what you create. Expectation drives the creative process. What do you expect? You expect whatever it is you're thinking about. Your thought process, the conversation in your head, is at the base of the results you create in life. So the question is, what are you thinking about? What is influencing and directing your thoughts? The answer: whatever you're allowing yourself to hear and see. This is the input you are feeding your brain. Period. Your mind is like an empty glass. It'll hold anything you put into it. You put in sensational news, salacious headlines, talk show rants, and you're pouring dirty water into your glass. If you've got dark, dismal, worrisome water in your glass, everything you create will be filtered through that muddy mess, because that's what you'll be thinking about. Garbage in, garbage out. All that drive time radio yak about murders, conspiracy, deaths, economy, and political battles drives your thinking process, which drives your expectations, which drives your creative output. That is bad news. But just like a dirty glass, if you flush it with clean, clear water under the faucet long enough, eventually you'll end up with a glass of pure, clear water. What is that clear water? Positive, inspirational, and supportive input and ideas. Stories of aspiration, people who, despite challenges, are overcoming obstacles and achieving great things. Strategies of success, prosperity, health, love, and joy. Ideas to create more abundance, to grow, expand, and become more. Examples and stories of what's good, right, and possible in the world. That's why we work so hard at Success Magazine. We want to provide you with those examples, those stories, and the key takeaways you can use to improve your view of the world, yourself, and the results you create. That's also why I read something inspirational and instructional for 30 minutes in the morning and evening, and have personal development CDs playing in my car. I'm flushing my glass and feeding my mind. Does this give me an edge over the guy who gets up and first thing reads the newspaper, listens to news radio on his commute to and from work, and watches the evening news before going to bed? You bet it does, and it can for you, too. Step 1. Stand guard. Unless you decide to hole up in a cave or on a desert island, you're going to get dirty water in your glass. It's going to be on billboards, on CNN while you're walking through the airport, on the screaming tabloid headlines at the checkout when you're buying groceries, etc. Even your friends, family members, and your own negative mental tapes can flood dirty water into your glass. But that doesn't mean you can't take steps to limit your exposure to all that grime. Maybe you can't avoid the tabloids stacked up at the checkout register, but you can cancel your subscriptions. You can refuse to listen to the radio to and from work and instead put in an instructional and inspirational CD. You can turn off the evening news and talk to your loved ones instead. You can buy a DVR and record only those programs you feel are truly educational and life-affirming, and speed through the commercials aimed at making you feel inadequate or lacking unless you buy more crap. I didn't really grow up with TV. I remember watching Solid Gold and the A-Team, remember them? But television wasn't a big part of our family life. I managed somehow to thrive without it, and that's given me a clearer perspective when I watch an occasional program now. Sure, I'll laugh along with the sitcom, but afterward, I feel the same as if I ate fast food, bloated and malnourished. And I can't get over how commercials prey on our psychology, our fears, pains, needs, and weaknesses. If I walk through life thinking that I'm not enough just as I am, that I need to buy this, that, and the other thing to be okay, how can I expect to create amazing results? It's estimated that Americans, 12 and older, spend 1,704 hours watching TV per year. That averages out to 4.7 hours per day. We're spending almost 30% of our waking hours watching TV. Almost 33 hours per week, more than one whole day each week. It's the equivalent of watching TV for 2 solid months out of every 12. Wow, and people wonder why they can't get ahead in life? Put yourself on a media diet. The media thrives on taking us hostage. Ever been stuck on the freeway with traffic backed up for miles, making you late, wondering what the heck's holding everything up? Sure enough, when you finally get close, you see that nothing physical is blocking the flow of cars. The wreck clearly happened a while ago and has since been moved to the side of the freeway. The 3-mile-per-hour crawl was caused by people rubbernecking. Now you're really irritated. But what happens when your car passes the wreck? You slow way down, take your eyes off the road in front of you, and crane your own neck. Why do good, decent people want to see something tragic and grotesque? It's our genetic heritage, going back to our prehistoric sense of self-preservation. We can't help ourselves, even if we're adept at avoiding negativity, and have trained ourselves to be relentlessly positive. When it comes to sensationalism, our basic nature can't resist. Media masters understand that. They know your nature, in many ways better than you. The media has always used shocking and sensational headlines to draw attention. But today, instead of 3 news TV and radio networks, there are hundreds, running 24/7. Instead of a few newspapers, there are endless portals reaching us from our computers to our phones. The competition for your attention has never been bloodier, and the media jockeys continually up the ante in shock value. They find a dozen or so of the most heinous, scandalous, criminal, murderous, bleak, and horrid things that happen in the world each day, and parade them through our papers, news channels, and the web over and over. Meanwhile, during that same 24-hour period, millions of wonderful, beautiful, incredible things have happened. Yet we hear very little about them. In being wired to seek out the negative, we create the demand for more and more. How could the positive news stories ever hope to compete with those ratings or advertising dollars? Let's go back to our freeway. Instead of a wreck on the side of the road, what if there was the most stunning, miraculous sunset you've ever seen? What would happen to the traffic then? I've seen this many times. It whizzes by at top speed. The great danger of the media is that it gives us a very perverted view of the world. Because the focus and the repetition of messaging is on the negative, that's what our minds start believing. This warped and narrow view of what's not working has a severe influence on your creative potential. It can be crippling. My personal junk filter. I'll share what I do to safeguard my mind. But I warn you, I have a rigorous mental diet. You'll want to adjust to your own preferences, but this system has worked beautifully for me. As you might guess, I don't watch or listen to any news, and I don't read any newspapers or news magazines. 99% of all news has no bearing on my personal life or my personal goals, dreams, and ambitions anyway. I have set up a few RSS feeds identifying the news and industry updates that do pertain to my direct interests and goals. The news that's helpful to me gets plucked out of the fray so I don't have to get any mud slung into my glass of water. While most people wade through hours of irrelevant garbage that hampers their thinking and crushes their spirit, I get the most productive information I need when I need it, in less than 15 minutes a day. Step 2. Enroll in Drive Time. It's not enough to eliminate negative input. To move in a positive direction, you must flush out the bad and fill up on the good. My car won't move without two things: gasoline and an ever-present library of instructional CDs I listen to as I drive. The average American drives about 12,000 miles a year. That's 300 hours of flushing potential right there. Brian Tracy taught me the concept of turning my car into a mobile classroom. He explained to me that by listening to instructional CDs as I drive, I gain knowledge equivalent to 2 semesters of an advanced college degree every year. Think about it. Using the time you're currently wasting by listening to Drive Time Radio, you could obtain the equivalent of PhD in leadership, sales success, wealth building, relationship excellence, or whatever course you choose. This commitment, in combination with your reading routine, separates you from the herd of average, 1 CD, DVD, or book at a time. E. Associations. Who's influencing you? Birds of a feather flock together. The people with whom you habitually associate are called your reference group. According to research by social psychologist Dr. David McClelland of Harvard, your reference group determines as much as 95% of your success or failure in life. Who do you spend the most time with? Who are the people you most admire? Are those two groups of people exactly the same? If not, why not? Jim Rohn taught that we become the combined average of the 5 people we hang around the most. Rohn would say we could tell the quality of our health, attitude, and income by looking at the people around us. The people with whom we spend our time determine what conversations dominate our attention, and to which attitudes and opinions we are regularly exposed. Eventually, we start to eat what they eat, talk like they talk, read what they read, think like they think, watch what they watch, treat people how they treat them, even dress like they dress. The funny thing is, more often than not, we are completely unaware of the similarities between us and our circle of 5. How are we not aware? Because your associations don't shove you in a direction. They nudge you ever so slightly over time. Their influence is so subtle that it's like being on an inner tube out in the ocean, feeling like you're floating in place, until you look up and realize the gentle current has pushed you a half-mile down the shore. Think of your friends who order greasy appetizers or a cocktail before dinner, and that's their routine. Hang out with them enough, and you'll find yourself grabbing for cheese nachos and potato skins, and joining them for that extra beer or glass of wine, matching their pace. Meanwhile, your other friends order healthy food and talk about the inspiring books they're reading and their ambitions in their businesses, and you begin to assimilate their behaviors and habits. You read and talk about what they talk about, you see the movies they're excited about, and you go to the places they recommend. The influence your friends have over you is subtle and can be positive or negative. Either way, the impact is incredibly powerful. Watch out, you cannot hang out with negative people and expect to live a positive life. So, what is the combined average income, health, or attitudes of the 5 people you spend most of your time with? Does the answer frighten you? If so, the best way to increase your potential for whatever traits you desire is to spend the majority of your time with people who already possess those traits. You will then see the power of influence work for you, rather than against you. The behaviors and attitudes which help them acquire the success you admire will begin to become part of your daily routine. Hang around them long enough, and you're likely to realize similar successful outcomes in your life. If you haven't already, jot down the names of those 5 people you hang around the most. Also write down their main characteristics, both positive and negative. It doesn't matter who they are. It could be your spouse, your brother, your neighbor, or your assistant. Now, average them out. What's their average health and bank balance? What's their average relationship like? As you look at your results, ask yourself, is this list okay for me? Is this where I want to go? It's time to reappraise and reprioritize the people you spend time with. These relationships can nurture you, starve you, or keep you stuck. Now that you've started to carefully consider with whom you spend your time, let's go a little deeper. As Jim Rohn taught me, it's powerful to evaluate and shift your associations into 3 categories: dissociations, limited associations, and expanded associations. Dissociations. You guard against the influences your children are exposed to, and the people they hang around. You are aware of the influence these people could have on your children and the choices they might make as a result. I believe this same principle should apply to you. You already know this. There are some people you might need to break away from. Completely. This might not be an easy step to take, but it's essential. You have to make the hard choice not to let certain negative influences affect you anymore. Determine the quality of life you want to have, and then surround yourself with the people who represent and support that vision. I'm constantly weeding out of my life people who refuse to grow and live positively. Growing and changing your associations is a lifelong process. Some people might say I'm too rigorous about it, but I'd like to be more so. I had a business relationship with someone I really liked, but when the economy got difficult, most of his conversation was focused on how horrible things were, how much his company was feeling the hit, and how hard it was out there. I said, "Man, you've got to stop working on your presentation about how bad life is. I can hear you collecting all the data points to reinforce your beliefs." He persisted in seeing everything as more dour and hopeless than it was, and I decided we had no business doing business together. When you make the tough decision to put up boundaries between you and people who drag you down, realize that they'll fight you, especially those closest to you. Your decision to live a more positive, Goal-oriented life will be a mirror to their own poor choices. You will make them uncomfortable and they will attempt to pull you back down to their level. Their resistance doesn't mean they don't love you or want the best for you. It's actually not about you at all. It's about their fear and their guilt about their own poor choices and lack of discipline. Just know that breaking away won't be easy. Limited associations. There are some people you can spend 3 hours with, but not 3 days. Others you can spend 3 minutes with, but not 3 hours. Always remember that the influence of associations is both powerful and subtle. The person you're walking with can determine whether you slow your pace or quicken it, literally and figuratively. Similarly, you can't help but be touched by the dominant attitudes, actions, and behaviors of the people with whom you spend time. Decide how much you can afford to be influenced based on how those people represent themselves. This is difficult, I know. I have had to do this on several occasions, even with close family members. I will not, however, allow someone else's actions or attitudes to have a dampening influence on me. I've got a neighbor who's a 3-minute friend. For 3 minutes, we have a great chit-chat, but we wouldn't mesh for 3 hours. I can hang out with an old high school friend for 3 hours, but he's not a 3-day guy. And then there are some people I can hang around for a few days, but wouldn't go on an extended vacation with. Take a look at your relationships and make sure you're not spending 3 hours with a 3-minute person. Expanded associations. We've just talked about weeding out negative influencers. While you're doing that, you'll also want to reach out. Identify people who have positive qualities in the areas of life where you want to improve, people with the financial and business success you desire, the parenting skills you want, the relationships you yearn for, the lifestyle you love. And then spend more time with them. Join organizations and businesses and health clubs where these people gather and make friends. Ahead, you'll see how I even used to drive to a different town to spend quality time, with fortuitous results. I rave about Jim Rohn throughout this book because, aside from my father, Jim remains my foremost mentor and influencer. My relationship with Jim perfectly exemplifies an expanded association. While I got to share a few private meals and spend a little time with him during our interviews and backstage before events, most of my time with Jim was spent listening to him in my car or reading his words in my living room. I have spent more than 1,000 hours getting direct instruction from Jim, and 99% of that was through books and audio programs. What's exciting about that is, no matter where you are in your life, maybe busy at home with small children or caretaking aging parents, working long hours with people with whom you have little in common, or living out in the country far from the nearest office building, you, too, can have almost any mentor you want, if he or she has gathered their best thoughts, stories, and ideas into books, CDs, DVDs, and podcasts. You have an unlimited bounty from which to draw. Take advantage of it. If you want to have a better, deeper, more meaningful relationship, ask yourself, who has the type of relationship I want? How can I spend more time with that person? Who can I meet who can positively influence me? Let their glow rub off on you. Befriend the person you think is the biggest, baddest, most successful person in your field. What do they read? Where do they go for lunch? How can that association influence you? You can build these expanded associations by joining networking groups, Toastmasters, and similar organizations. Find the charity organizations, symphonies, country clubs, where the people you want to emulate gather. Find a peak performance partner. Another way to increase your exposure to expanded associations is by teaming up with a peak performance partner, someone as equally committed to study and personal growth as you. This person should be someone you trust, someone bold enough to tell you what they really think about you, your attitudes, and performance. It could be that this person is a longtime friend, but he or she may be someone who doesn't know you well at all. The point is to get, and give, an unbiased, honest, outside perspective. My current accountability partner is my good friend Landon Taylor. As I mentioned before, we have a 30-minute call every Friday to discuss our weekly wins, losses, fixes, ahas, and where we are on our growth plans. The anticipation of the call and knowing I have to be accountable to Landon keeps me extra committed throughout the week. I make a record of Landon's losses or any feedback he needs and make sure to ask him about it the next week. He does the same for me. That way we hold each other accountable. He might say, "Okay, you screwed up here last week," and admitted it and committed to change. "What did you do about that this week?" Life is life. We're both busy executives, but it's amazing to me that we actually end up doing this every week without fail. It's not easy. Sometimes I'll be flying through my day and think, "Oh, crud. I have to do this." But often in the middle of the call, I'll think, "I'm so glad we're having this conversation." Even in preparing for it and thinking of my big wins and losses for the week, I learn about myself. This week I told Landon, "You know, I'm in the middle of so many things. I'm writing my book, I'm having a lot of realizations, and so many ahas, but not one thing that's really compelling." He said, "Let this be the last week that you don't come to the table with an aha." Gulp. "Don't shortchange me," he said. Point taken. In reality, I was shortchanging myself by not identifying one thing memorable enough to share. I have a serious challenge for you if you're up for it. Want real feedback? Find people who care enough about you to be brutally honest with you. Ask them these questions. How do I show up to you? What do you think my strengths are? In what areas do you think I can improve? Where do you think I sabotage myself? What's one thing I can stop doing that would benefit me the most? What's the one thing I should start doing? Invest in mentorship. Paul J. Meyer is another man who served as a mentor to me. Paul passed away in 2009 at age 81. Whenever I thought I was really doing things, really playing at a high level, I'd get around Paul. He was my reality check. What he did before lunch was mind-boggling to me. I got to spend a lot of time with him. Paul bought one of my companies, and then I did a turnaround for one of his companies. He was a very powerful spirit in my life. After spending a couple of hours with Paul, hearing about all his plans and ventures and activities, my head would spin. Just trying to make sense of all he had going on exhausted me. After time with Paul, I'd want to go take a nap. But my association with him raised my game. His walking pace was my running pace. It expanded my ideas about how big I could play and how ambitious I could be. You have to get around people like that. You're never too good for a mentor. During my interview with Harvey Mackay, he told me, "I have had 20 coaches, if you can believe it. I have a speech coach, I have a writing coach, I have a humor coach, I've got a language coach, and on and on. I have always found it interesting that the most successful people, the truly top performers, are the ones willing to hire and pay for the best coaches and trainers there are. It pays to invest in your improved performance. Finding and engaging a mentor doesn't need to be a mysterious or intimidating process either." When I sat down with Ken Blanchard, he explained the simplicity of engaging a mentor. Success, January 2010. The first thing you want to remember with a mentor is that it doesn't need to take a lot of their time. The best advice I've ever gotten is in short clips. having lunch or breakfast with somebody, just telling them what I'm working on and asking their advice and all. You will be amazed how successful business people are willing to be mentors to people when it's not taking a lot of time. John Wooden reinforces the point that others desire to be mentors. Success, September 2008. Mentoring is your true legacy. It is the greatest inheritance you can give to others. And it should never end. It is why you get up every day. To teach and be taught. He went on to explain that mentorship is also a two-way street. An individual needs to be open to being mentored. It is our responsibility to be willing to allow our lives and our minds to be touched, molded, and strengthened by the people who surround us. Develop your own personal board of advisors. As part of my plan to be wiser, more strategic, and operate more effectively, as well as expand the time and interaction I have with high-minded leaders, I've been developing a board of advisors in my personal life. I've hand-selected a dozen people because of their areas of expertise, creative thinking ability, and/or my great respect for who they are. Once a week I reach out to a few of them and solicit ideas, run thoughts by them, and ask for feedback and input. Having started this process, I can tell you the benefits I've already received have been profound, far more than I anticipated. It's surprising that genius people are willing to share when you show sincere interest. Who should be on your personal board of advisors? Seek out positive people who have achieved the success you want to create in your own life. Remember the adage, never ask advice of someone with whom you wouldn't want to trade places. 3. Environment. Changing your view changes your perspective. When I was in real estate, working in the East Bay of San Francisco, I lived and worked within a very limited demographic. I saw the same kinds of people operating at the same level over and over. I knew that I needed to find an elevated circle of associations in order to go where I wanted to go. I started driving across the bay to one of the richest and most beautiful spots on the planet, Tiburon in Marin County, north of San Francisco. If you've ever been to Monaco, that's what Tiburon looks like, but far quainter. It's a spectacular spot. I would go to a delightful seafood restaurant, Sam's on the Wharf. The food was great, but more importantly, the restaurant was popular with the area's more affluent residents. Aside from going to Sam's to expand my associations, I'd also sit on the wharf and look up at the hillside. I was mesmerized by the multi-million-dollar houses that hung off the cliffs. One in particular always caught my eye, a blue, 4-story home with an elevator and a whale lightning rod at the top. What would be the perfect house? I used to ask myself all the time. If someone could just give me one of them, which one would I pick? The answer was always the same, this beautiful blue one. It was in the perfect spot with a bright vista, the best of the bunch. On my way home from brunch one morning, I saw an open house sign and thought it'd be fun to check it out. One sign led to another as I followed them zigzagging up the cliffs along the narrow streets. I finally reached the top of the hill and found the advertised home. As I entered and walked up to a spectacular bay window, the world opened up in front of me. The peninsula tip of Tiburon, Angel Island across the bay, Berkeley and the East Bay, the Bay Bridge, and the entire San Francisco skyline over to the Golden Gate Bridge in a 300-degree expanse. I walked out onto the balcony and looked around. Suddenly I realized that this was the very house I'd been looking at for years. This was the Blue House. I signed the contract on the spot. My dream house was now mine. I can't really say that I met anybody at Sam's who changed my life. However, that environment had a powerful effect on me. Seeing those homes up on the cliffs fueled my ambition and expanded my dreams. I ended up working harder than I ever thought possible to make those dreams come true, and they did. The dream in your heart may be bigger than the environment in which you find yourself. Sometimes you have to get out of that environment to see that dream fulfilled. It's like planting an oak sapling in a pot. Once it becomes root-bound, its growth is limited. It needs a great space to become a mighty oak. So do you. When I talk about your environment, I'm not just referring to where you live. I'm referring to whatever surrounds you. Creating a positive environment to support your success means clearing out all the clutter in your life. Not just the physical clutter that makes it hard for you to work productively and efficiently, although that's important too, but also the psychic clutter of whatever around you isn't working, whatever's broken, whatever makes you cringe. Each and every incomplete thing in your life exerts a draining force on you, sucking the energy of accomplishment and success out of you as surely as a vampire stealing your blood. Every incomplete promise, commitment, and agreement saps your strength because it blocks your momentum and inhibits your ability to move forward. Incomplete tasks keep calling you back to the past to take care of them. So think about what you can complete today. Additionally, when you're creating an environment to support your goals, remember that you get in life what you tolerate. This is true in every area of your life, particularly within your relationships with family, friends, and colleagues. What you have decided to tolerate is also reflected in the situations and circumstances of your life right now. Put another way, you will get in life what you accept and expect you are worthy of. If you tolerate disrespect, you will be disrespected. If you tolerate people being late and making you wait, people will show up late for you. If you tolerate being underpaid and overworked, that will continue for you. If you tolerate your body being overweight, tired, and perpetually sick, it will be. It's amazing how life will organize around the standards you set for yourself. Some people think they're the victims of other people's behavior, but in actuality, we have control over how people treat us. Protect your emotional, mental, and physical space so you can live with peace, rather than in the chaos and stress the world will hurl upon you. If you want to foster a disciplined routine of rhythms and consistency so that Big Mo not only pays a visit to your house but moves in, you have to be sure your environment is welcoming and supportive of your becoming, doing, and performing at world-class levels. While we're on the topic of world-class, in the next chapter, I want to help you take everything you've learned thus far and give you the secret to now accelerating your results. Getting greater results with only a little more effort may feel a little like cheating, like an unfair advantage. But who said life was fair? Chapter 6: Acceleration. When I lived in La Jolla, California, for exercise and a test of will, I would regularly ride my bike 2 miles straight up Mount Soledad. There are very few things you can do voluntarily that cause more pain and suffering than riding a bike up a steep mountain without stopping. There is a point at which you hit the wall and come face to face with your true inner character. Suddenly, all the projections and ideas you had about yourself are stripped away and you're left with the naked truth. Your mind starts inventing all sorts of convenient alibis on why it's okay to stop. It is then when you're faced with one of life's greatest questions. Do you push through the pain and continue on, or will you crack like a walnut and give up? Lance Armstrong was the success cover feature in June 2009. I remember watching Lance during his first Tour de France victory. The tour had entered the grueling mountain stages of the race. The other riders dismissed Lance because he had never been a renowned climber. During the third mountain ascent through freezing rains, mist, and then hail, Lance got separated from his team. He was left fighting the top climbers in the world, alone. On the final ascent, 18 miles straight up into Sestriere, after 5.5 hours climbing mountains, every rider was suffering. Each needed to search the depths of his stamina and self-definition. Could they endure? It became a test of who could best survive the hardships and find the strength to keep going, who would crack and who wouldn't. With 5 miles to go, Lance was 32 seconds behind the leaders, an eternity while climbing a mountain on a bike. During a curve, Lance stood up and surged ahead until he caught the 2 leaders, both established world-class climbers. Having expended almost everything he had in him, Lance then launched an attack and gained several lengths on the leaders. He later said in his book It's Not About the Bike, My Journey Back to Life, Putnam, 2000. When you open a gap and your competitors don't respond, it tells you something. They're hurting, and when they're hurting, that is when you take them. Completely exhausted, struggling to breathe, his legs and arms burning with fatigue, Lance kept pounding the pedals. Some tried, but no one could catch him, they just didn't have it in them. At the finish line, with fists pumping in the air, the unexpected contender won the stage race and ultimately the Tour de France. In this chapter, I want to talk to you about those moments of truth and how the compound effect can help you break through to new and greater levels of success, faster than you imagined possible. When you've prepared, practiced, studied, and consistently put in the required effort, sooner or later you'll be presented with your own moment of truth. In that moment, you will define who you are and who you are becoming. It is in those moments where growth and improvement live, when we either step forward or shrink back, when we climb to the top of the podium and seize the medal, or we continue to applaud sullenly from the crowd for others' victories. We'll also look at how you can consistently deliver more than people expect, compounding your good fortune even further. Moments of truth. There is a point in every race when a rider encounters his real opponent and understands that it's himself, writes Lance in his autobiography. In my most painful moments on the bike, I am at my most curious, and I wonder each and every time how I will respond. Will I discover my innermost weakness, or will I seek out my innermost strength? When I was in real estate, I hit the wall several times a day. While driving to an expired listing property, after just getting pummeled by the last prospect, I'd start conjuring up all sorts of excuses to skip the sales call and head back to the office. While out canvassing a neighborhood, dogs would snarl at me or it looked like it might start to rain. I'd be in the midst of money time, 5 to 9 p.m., cold calling, and frequently get chewed out for interrupting someone's dinner or favorite TV show. I was sure I needed to take a break to go to the bathroom or get a glass of water. But instead of quitting, every time I hit one of those mental and emotional walls, I recognized that my competitors were facing the same challenges. I knew this was another moment that, if I kept going, I would be strides ahead of them. These were the defining moments of success and progress. It wasn't difficult, painful, or challenging when I was just running with the herd, just keeping up, but not really getting ahead. It's not getting to the wall that counts, it's what you do after you hit it. Lou Holtz, the famous football coach, knew it was what you did after you did your best that created victories. In one game, his team was down 42-0 at halftime. During the halftime break, Lou showed his team a dramatic highlight reel of second efforts to block, tackle, and recover the ball. He then told the players that they were not on his team because they could give their all on every play. Every player on every team does that. He said they were on his team because of their ability to make that critical extra effort on each play. It's the extra effort after you have done your best that is the difference maker. His team went on to win the game in the second half. That is how you win. Muhammad Ali was one of the greatest fighters of all time, not only because of his speed and agility, but also because of his strategy. On October 30, 1974, Ali regained his heavyweight championship, besting George Foreman in one of the biggest upsets in boxing history in the Rumble in the Jungle. Almost no one, not even Ali's longtime supporter Howard Cosell, believed the former champion had a chance of winning. Both Joe Frazier and Ken Norton had beaten Ali previously, and George Foreman had knocked both of them out in only the second round. Ali's strategy? To take advantage of the younger champion's weakness, his lack of staying power. Ali knew if he could get Foreman to his wall, he could then take the advantage. This is when Ali came up with the tactic later termed rope-a-dope. Ali would lean on the ropes, shielding his face, while Foreman threw hundreds of punches over 7 rounds. By the 8th round, Foreman was exhausted. He was at his wall. It was then that Ali dropped Foreman with a combination at center ring. Hitting the wall isn't an obstacle, it's an opportunity. During Lance Armstrong's second attempt at winning the Tour de France, it was once again time to head into the mountains. The first big climb would be where Lance had experienced a devastating crash on a wet, spring day earlier that same year. The crash left him with a concussion and a broken vertebra. Now it was raining yet again. Instead of being concerned or hesitant, he said, "This is perfect attacking weather, mainly because I know the others don't like it. I believe that nobody in the world is better at suffering. It's a good day for me." He was right. Lance brought home his second victory. When conditions are great, things are easy. There aren't any distractions, no one is interrupting, temptations aren't luring, and nothing is disturbing your stride. That too is when most everyone else does great. It's not until situations are difficult, when problems come up and temptation is great, that you get to prove your worthiness for progress. As Jim Rohn would say, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. When you hit the wall in your disciplines, routines, rhythms, and consistency, realize that's when you are separating yourself from your old self, scaling that wall, and finding your new powerful, triumphant, and victorious self. Multiplying your results. I have an exciting opportunity for you. We've talked about how the simple disciplines and behaviors will compound over time, delivering amazingly powerful results for you. What if you could speed up the process and multiply your results? Would you be interested? I want to show you how just a little bit more effort can add exponentially to your outcomes. Let's say you're weight training and your program calls for you to do 12 repetitions of a certain weight. Now, if you do the 12, you're fulfilling the expectation of your program. Great job. Stay consistent, and ultimately, you will see this discipline compound into powerful results for you. Yet, if you get to 12, even if you've hit your max, and you push out another 3 to 5 reps, your impact on that set will be multiplied several times. You won't just add a few reps to the aggregate of your workout. No, those reps done after you hit your max will multiply your results. You've just pushed through the wall of your max. The previous reps just got you there. The real growth happens with what you do after you're at the wall. Arnold Schwarzenegger made famous a weight training method called the cheating principle. Arnold was a stickler for perfect technique. He contended that once you reached your maximum number of lifts in perfect form, adjusting your wrists or leaning back to recruit other muscles to assist the working muscles, cheating a little, would allow you to do 5 or 6 more reps, which would significantly improve the results of that set. You can also achieve this by having a workout partner who assists the last few reps you couldn't have done on your own. If you're a runner, you know the experience. You get to the goal you set for yourself that day, and you're feeling the burn. You're at your wall, but you go a little farther, a little longer. This, little longer, is really a massive expansion of your limits. You have multiplied the results of that single run. Take the magic penny we talked about in Chapter 1, the one that doubles in value each day, showing you the result of small compounded actions. If you just doubled that penny one extra time per week during those same 31 days, the compounded penny would result in $171 million instead of $10 million. Again, just extra effort in 4 days and the result was many times greater. That is how the math of doing just a little bit more than expected works. Viewing yourself as your toughest competitor is one of the best ways to multiply your results. Go above and beyond when you hit the wall. Another way to multiply your results is pushing past what other people expect of you, doing more than enough. Beat the expectations. Oprah is famous for using this principle, blasting beyond anyone's expectations with her generosity and ability to live and work in a big way. Do you remember how she launched her 19th season in September 2004? When it comes to Oprah, we know to expect some fanfare, but she blew everyone away. That season opener was all the media or anyone else talked about for days afterward. Let's go back in time for a minute. The audience members were selected because their friends and family members had written in saying each of them desperately needed a new car. Oprah opened the show by calling 11 people to the stage. She gave every one of them a car, a 2005 Pontiac G6. Then the real surprise. She surpassed everyone's expectations when she distributed gift boxes to the rest of the audience, saying one of the boxes contained a key to the 12th car. But when the audience members opened their boxes, every one of them had a set of keys. She screamed, "Everybody gets a car. Everybody gets a car." While this might be her most famous example, Oprah continues to go beyond our expectations in most everything she does. In other segments, Oprah surprised a 20-year-old girl who had spent years in foster care and homeless shelters with a 4-year college scholarship, a makeover and $10,000 in clothes. And she gave a family with 8 foster children who were going to be kicked out of their house $130,000 to pay for and repair their home. Now you might be saying, yeah, but she's Oprah, of course she can do those things. But the truth is there are plenty of others in Oprah's position, with the finances and the fame, who could do those things, but never venture into the realm of extraordinary. Oprah does. That's what makes her Oprah. Take a lesson from her. You can do more than expected in every aspect of your life. When it was time to propose to my wife, Georgia, I could have done what was expected and met with her father to ask for his daughter's hand in marriage. Instead, I decided to pay great respect to her father by preparing my speech in Portuguese. I got Georgia's sister to translate what I wanted to say. He understood English well enough, but wasn't entirely comfortable with it. All the way up to Los Angeles from San Diego, I rehearsed the words. I walked through the door carrying flowers and treats and asked her dad to join us in the living room. I then delivered my memorized speech. Thankfully, he said, yes. But I didn't stop there. On the way back, and over the next couple of days, I called each one of her 5 brothers and also asked for their blessing to join the family. Some were easy to convince, others proceeded to have me earn it. The point is, she told me later that one of the most special aspects about how I proposed was how I had honored her dad and how I had called every one of her brothers, and had her sister teach me Portuguese. That made the act extra special. The result of that extra effort paid off exponentially. Stuart Johnson owns the parent company to Success, Video Plus LP. Stuart put a lot of money and a 22-year reputation on the line when he decided to acquire Success Magazine and the other properties of Success Media. During one of the most challenging economies in recent history, and as print publishing was being seen as unfavorable, the move in itself was bold and audacious, but then he did even more than could be expected. While the new business enterprise was still finding its legs, and his primary business was taking a couple steps backward like the rest of the world during the economic tsunami of 2008 and 2009, Stuart launched a nonprofit foundation dedicated to kids. If he was going to make a commitment to helping teach the fundamentals of personal development to the world, he wanted to be especially sure that information would reach teenagers. So he launched the Success Foundation. He had the fundamental principles of personal achievement compiled into a book called Success for Teens and is distributing it for free through responsible partners and nonprofit organizations to help nurture young minds. Stuart personally funded the administration and management of the Success Foundation, and for the first year, with the help of a few good friends, he funded the distribution of more than 1 million books. Today, that number is far greater and growing. Now, Stuart was already in for a heavy investment and big risk without the burdens of funding the new foundation. But the additional contribution and dedication to the foundation multiplied the statement of his commitment several-fold to potential partners, the press, his peers, and his own staff. He was doing far more than expected, and it spoke volumes. Where in life can you do more than expected when you hit the wall? Or where can you go for, wow? It doesn't take a lot more effort, but the little extra multiplies your results many times over. Whether you're making calls, serving customers, recognizing your team, acknowledging your spouse, going for a run, bench pressing, planning a date night, sharing time with your kids, whatever, what's the little extra you can do that exceeds expectations and accelerates your results? Do the unexpected. I'm a contrarian by nature, I know. Tell me what everyone else does, what's the consensus and what's popular, and I will typically do the opposite. If everyone is zigging, I'm gonna zag. To me, what's popular is average, it's what's common. Common things deliver common results. The most popular restaurant is McDonald's. The most popular drink is Coca-Cola. The most popular beer is Budweiser. The most popular wine is Franzia. Yeah, the stuff that comes in a box. Consume those popular things, and you'll be part of the common, average pack. But that's ordinary. There's nothing wrong with ordinary. I just prefer to shoot for extraordinary. For instance, everyone sends Christmas cards. But since everyone does, it doesn't really have much emotional impact, in my opinion. So I choose to send Thanksgiving cards instead. How many Thanksgiving cards do you get? Exactly. It makes a statement, and instead of bulk printed, computer-generated, best wishes cards, I handwrite personal sentiments expressing how grateful I am for my relationship with that person and what he or she means to me. Same effort, but a much greater impact. Richard Branson built his career on doing the unexpected. I love to watch him launch a new company. Each stunt is bolder, scarier, and more unexpected than the last. Whether it's flying a hot air balloon around the globe or driving a tank down Fifth Avenue in New York to introduce Virgin Cola to the United States, Richard always delivers the unexpected. He could get by with the expected press release, a press conference or two, and some swanky party, and call it a day, but instead he goes for the astonishing. He probably spends as much as, and sometimes even less than, other companies do to launch a product. He just does it in unexpected style. The wow factor makes a statement and multiplies the impact of his efforts. More often than not, the extra effort doesn't cost that much more money or energy. When I was selling real estate, everyone else would call on expired listings when they came up. Instead, I got in my car and showed up on their doorstep and hand-delivered a "sold" sign. "Take this," I'd say when they'd open the door. "You'll need it if you hire me to take over this listing." For the price it took to keep my gas tank full, I immediately and exponentially increased my chance of getting the listing. Recently, Alex, a friend of mine, was up for a big job. He lives in California and the job was in Boston. He was one of a final 12 candidates. They were going to interview local candidates in person and those out of the area via video conferencing. He called me, asking if I knew how to facilitate a web camera video conference. "How badly do you want this job?" I asked him. "It's my dream job," Alex told me. "It's everything I've spent 45 years preparing to do. Then get on a plane and show up in person." I said, "No need," Alex said. "They're flying in the final 3 for a last interview." "Listen," I told him. "If you want to be in that final 3, you should separate yourself by doing the unexpected. Fly across the country on a moment's notice and show up in person. That's how you make a statement. If I set my sights on something, I'm going to ensure success by going all in and all out." I launch what I call shock and awe campaigns. During this same job hunt, I suggested Alex pull out all the stops, attack from every possible front, and do it relentlessly. Research all the decision makers, I told him. Find out their interests, hobbies, kids' hobbies, spouses' hobbies, neighbors' hobbies, etc. Send them books, articles, gifts, and other resources that you think they might like. Is this over the top? Heck yes, that's the point. They'll know you're trying to butter them up, but they'll appreciate your gumption and creativity. You'll certainly get their attention and most likely, their respect. Then I continued. Research all the people in the organization. Take that list and run it by your entire network to see if they know anyone who might know someone in this organization. Search every name against your LinkedIn database. Find a few people to connect with. Talk with them and ask them to put in a good word for you. Send them gifts, notes, and other things, and ask them to hand deliver these things to the decision makers. Phone, email, fax, text, tweet, Facebook, etc. them during the process. Could this be overly aggressive? Heck, yes. But I have found that you may lose 1 out of 5 for being too aggressive, but you get the other 4. By the way, Alex did not take my advice, and he did not get the job. He didn't even get to be in the final 3. I can unequivocally say he was a far better choice than the person the organization hired, but Alex failed to make an impression, and it cost him his dream job. I'm on the board of a company that needed a congressman to sign off on a piece of legislation that affected whether this company could move forward on an important project. This guy wasn't budging, not because of the actual issue, but because of a political axe he was grinding against others who publicly favored the issue. Instead of making any more futile appeals to sway him, I suggested we go above his head and talk to his boss, his wife. We went through our network until one person led us to someone who was friends with his wife. We then waited for her outside following a church service she attended, and had her friend introduce us. We explained our important case and cause, which was to build an after-school facility in an impoverished neighborhood that would affect the lives of hundreds of children if her husband would support it. Needless to say, He signed on by Tuesday that following week and the company got its project. In our attention deficit, propaganda-saturated society, sometimes doing the unexpected is required to get your voice heard. If you have a cause or ideal worthy of attention, do what it takes, even the unexpected, to make your case heard. Add a little audacity to your repertoire. Do better than expected. Invisible Children, another nonprofit for which I'm a board member, helps rescue and recuperate children who have been abducted and made soldiers in northern Uganda and the Congo. To gain awareness for their cause, they staged a 100-city event called The Rescue, where more than 800,000 young people camped outside until prominent leaders of the community came to rescue them, thus gaining their attention and support. After 4 days, all but one city had been rescued, having people like U.S. Sens. Ted Kennedy and John Kerry, Val Kilmer, Kristen Bell, and many others show up in 99 other cities. The last city to get rescued was Chicago, and it required Oprah. After 6 days, Oprah was a no-show. On the 4th day, they organized a march that went round and round her studios. The next day they put on a singing and dancing presentation that went on all day and night. Then the 6th day, having endured harsh weather and sleeping in the rain, the more than 500 participants surrounded her studio and stood in silence holding signs. Starting at 3:30 a.m. that morning, Oprah walked out the doors of Harpo Studios, spoke with the organization's founders, and invited the entire group to participate in a live broadcast segment that morning to her more than 20 million viewers. That attention got Invisible Children on Larry King Live and 232 other news outlets, to reach a total of more than 65 million people. A bill is currently moving through Congress supporting Invisible Children's efforts to save these children. The organization had already pulled off more than expected with the rescue event, but the little extra gumption and steadfastness to capture that last city gained Invisible Children its biggest advocate to date, multiplying its results many times over. Find the line of expectation and then exceed it, even when it comes to the small stuff, or maybe especially then. Whatever I think the dress standard is going to be for any event, for example, I always choose to go at least one step above it. When I am unsure of the attire, I always err on the side of dressing better than I suppose the occasion calls for. Simple, I know, but it's just one way I try to meet my standard to always do and be better than expected. When I do keynotes for large companies, I spend a considerable amount of time preparing, learning about their organization, products, markets, and their expectations for my talk. My goal is always to significantly surpass what they expect, and I do this through tireless preparation. Doing better than expected becomes a big part of your reputation. Your reputation for excellence multiplies your results in the marketplace many times over. I did some work with a CEO whose philosophy was to pay people, including his vendors and suppliers, a few days in advance of the contract commitment. I was always blown away when I received a check on the 27th of the month from him for next month's payment. When I asked him about it, he said the obvious: it's the same money, but the surprise and goodwill it buys is immeasurable. Why wouldn't you? This is one of the reasons why I admire Steve Jobs so much. Of all the sensational people we've featured on the cover of Success, Jobs is one of my favorites. Whatever your expectations are about the next Apple product launch, Jobs always has a little, or a lot of, something extra to wow you. In the grand scheme of things, it might be only a minor addition, but even so, it's better than expected and multiplies the impression and response from his customers and deepens their loyalty. In a world where most things don't meet expectations, You can significantly accelerate your results and stand out from the pack by doing better than expected. I like the boldness of what Robert Schuller told us in his success feature. I say no idea is worthwhile if it doesn't start with, wow. Nordstrom is famous for this standard. When it comes to customer service, they always strive to do better than expected. Nordstrom has been known to take back an item that a customer bought more than a year ago, without a receipt, and in some cases, purchased at a different store. Why would they do that? Because they know exceeding expectations builds trust and creates customer loyalty. As a result, they've developed an extraordinary reputation that continues to attract attention. After all, I'm reminding you of it here. The multiplier keeps growing. I challenge you to adopt these philosophies in your own life, in your daily habits, disciplines, and routines. Giving a little more time, energy, or thought to your efforts won't just improve your results, it will multiply them. It takes very little extra to be extraordinary. In all areas of your life, look for the multiplier opportunities where you can go a little further, push yourself a little harder, last a little longer, prepare a little better, and deliver a little bit more. Where can you do better and more than expected? When can you do the totally unexpected? Find as many opportunities for wow, and the level and speed of your accomplishments will astonish you and everyone else around you.